A 67-year-old Vietnam veteran receives a $350 parking ticket while rushing his diabetic wife to the emergency room. Soon after, his insurance claim is denied and medical bills begin to overwhelm him. When he appears before Judge Frank Caprio, defeated and frustrated by a system that's failed him repeatedly, something remarkable happens that renews faith in real justice. This is the story of Dave Thompson, a man whose experience shows what occurs when bureaucratic indifference meets Judge Caprio's steadfast dedication to honoring those who served our country. Share where you're watching from in the comments, because this story of perseverance and fairness will resonate deeply with veterans and families everywhere, those who truly understand the price of service to our nation. You're about to see Judge Caprio deliver one of his most powerful lessons on what it means to respect and protect the people who sacrificed for our freedom. Wednesday morning, 10:15 a.m., Providence Municipal Court. Judge Frank Caprio scans his docket, reviewing several disputed parking cases. One name immediately catches his attention. Robert Martinez, 67 years old, is contesting a $350 parking ticket issued in a hospital emergency zone while his wife was undergoing a medical crisis. The citation reads like a typical bureaucratic report. Vehicle parked in emergency lane at Rhode Island Hospital for 45 minutes during peak hours. Defendant claims medical emergency but failed to display proper emergency placard. No exceptions granted. But the real story is told through the documents Robert brought with him. Medical records confirming his wife Maria's diabetic emergency, VA papers showing his 70% service-connected disability, and insurance denial letters that reflect years of hardship. Judge Caprio, a longtime advocate for veterans and the son of Italian immigrants, has seen countless cases like this, where the system forgets those who once served it. He knows that sometimes true justice requires compassion, not just strict rules. In the small courtroom, around a dozen people wait for their Wednesday morning hearings. A young mother holds forms for a disputed parking ticket. 2 college students whisper about their campus fines. Several elderly residents sit quietly, uneasy in the formal setting. Then Robert Martinez enters. He carries a worn manila folder thick with paperwork. His slow walk bears the mark of old combat injuries, and his clean but faded clothes quietly reveal the life of a man surviving on a fixed income. His eyes reflect the exhaustion of someone who's faced countless struggles against bureaucracy. Bob served as a maintenance supervisor for 37 years after returning from Vietnam, where shrapnel from a mortar blast left him with lasting leg and back injuries. He's been married to Linda for 43 years, but her recent battle with diabetes has drained their savings as they fight through a healthcare system that often feels more obstructive than supportive. In Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, however, fairness and compassion guide every decision. Here, military service is honored, and veterans are treated as people, not paperwork. "Good morning, Mr. Martinez," Judge Caprio says with a tone of genuine respect. "I see you're contesting a parking citation from Rhode Island Hospital." "Your Honor," Martinez replies, "my wife Maria had a diabetic emergency at 6 a.m. Her blood sugar dropped dangerously low, and she was unconscious. I had to get her to the hospital immediately." The courtroom falls silent, sensing this is far from a routine parking case. I pulled up to the emergency entrance, the same place ambulances use. I figured if it was okay for them, it was okay for me. I carried her inside and stayed for 3 hours while they stabilized her. Judge Caprio listens attentively, already recognizing the truth and humanity behind this story. When I returned to move my car, I found a $350 parking ticket on the windshield. The officer told me, "Emergency or not, rules are rules." Bob's voice trembles slightly as he speaks. "Your Honor, I've been going back and forth with our insurance company for 6 months. They've rejected Maria's diabetes medication claims 3 times. We only have about $400 left in savings. And now there's this ticket." Officer Patterson, who wrote the citation, shifts uneasily in his seat, clearly uncomfortable being involved in a case tied to a veteran's medical emergency. "Mr. Martinez," Judge Caprio says kindly, "tell me about your military service." Bob straightens in his chair, the only time he's shown any strength during the entire hearing. "Vietnam, 1971 to 1973, 25th Infantry Division. I was injured during the Tet Offensive. took shrapnel to my legs and back. I was awarded the Purple Heart. Judge Caprio's face softens with visible respect. And you've been dealing with service-related disabilities since returning? Yes, sir. I have a 70% disability rating from the VA. Some days I can barely walk. But that morning when Maria needed me, I managed somehow. The weight of Bob's words settles over the courtroom. A man who sacrificed for his country, continues to live with the consequences, and is now facing punishment for trying to save his wife's life. Judge Caprio reviews the ticket and attached documents carefully, his expression growing more focused with each page. Mr. Martinez, he finally says, I see that you submitted medical proof of your wife's emergency, your VA disability paperwork, and insurance correspondence. What response did you receive from the parking authority? Bob's hands tremble slightly as he opens his folder. They sent me a standard letter, Your Honor. He begins quietly. It said that medical emergencies don't qualify as exemptions from parking rules and that I should have used a taxi or an ambulance instead. Several people in the courtroom shake their heads at the cold response. Judge Caprio leans forward. A taxi for an unconscious diabetic woman? He asks, his tone calm but edged with disbelief. That's what they told me, Your Honor, Bob replies. The woman on the phone said I should have called 911 and waited for an ambulance, instead of taking matters into my own hands. Judge Caprio removes his glasses and a gesture well known to regulars in his courtroom as a sign. He's deeply disturbed. Mr. Martinez, he says carefully, how long would it have taken for an ambulance to reach your home and get your wife to the hospital? Bob's voice strengthens, driven by months of frustration. At least 20 minutes to reach us, then another 15 to get her there. Maria could have died, Your Honor. The doctor told me I saved her life by acting fast. Judge Caprio nods slowly. And yet, he says, the parking authority expects you to risk your wife's life for the sake of a parking rule? That's exactly what they said, Your Honor. Bob answers firmly. The supervisor told me everyone thinks their case is an emergency and that they can't make exceptions or everyone would claim one. Judge Caprio stands, pacing slightly behind the bench. Mr. Martinez, he says, looking directly at him. You're a Purple Heart veteran with service-related disabilities. You saved your wife's life by getting her emergency care as quickly as possible. And the city's solution is to fine you $350 and imply you should have let your wife die waiting for proper protocol. Bob nods slowly, eyes glistening with tears he's been holding back for months. Your Honor, he says quietly, I've served this country, paid taxes for 43 years, and never once asked for special treatment. But when my wife was dying, Judge Caprio returns to his seat, but his tone shifts from judicial neutrality to protective resolve. Mr. Martinez, he asks, have you received any assistance from veteran service organizations for your wife's medical bills? I've tried, Your Honor, Bob replies, his voice breaking. But there's too much red tape. The VA says Maria's care isn't service-related, even though my disability checks are what keep us going. The insurance company keeps inventing new reasons to deny coverage. It feels like I'm fighting another war, this time against paperwork and indifference. His words hang heavy in the air. A man who once gave his health and youth for his country now finds himself battling the very institutions meant to protect him. Judge Frank Caprio leans back, his expression steady but his presence radiating quiet outrage at the injustice before him. The courtroom remains still, everyone aware they're witnessing a powerful reminder of how a just society should honor those who have served. Mr. Martinez, let me explain something about true service and sacrifice. Your dedication didn't end when you left Vietnam. It's continued every single day since. For 43 years, you've worked hard despite the lasting effects of your service injuries. You've cared for your wife through her illness and faced endless bureaucracy from people who seem to have forgotten what integrity really means. Bob looks up, perhaps hearing genuine respect for the first time in months. When you carried your unconscious wife into that hospital, you weren't violating parking laws. You were showing the same courage and devotion that once earned you a Purple Heart. Judge Caprio rises, his voice calm but firm with moral authority. Officer Patterson, you issued this ticket. Did you witness Mr. Martinez carrying his wife into the hospital? Officer Patterson straightens up, hesitant. No, Your Honor. I arrived about an hour later and saw the car had been parked for quite some time. Did you check to see if there was an ongoing medical emergency? I contacted hospital security, but they said they couldn't verify any patient details due to privacy laws. Judge Caprio's face makes it clear what he thinks of that answer. So you issued a $350 ticket to a Purple Heart veteran without confirming whether his wife was inside that hospital, possibly fighting for her life. The regulations don't allow exceptions for medical emergencies, Your Honor. I was following department policy. Department policy? Judge Caprio repeats the words, his tone heavy with disapproval. Mr. Martinez, do you know what I call a department policy that penalizes a veteran for trying to save his wife's life? I call it a betrayal of the very principles this nation claims to uphold. The courtroom feels the weight of Judge Caprio's words, his moral conviction cutting through bureaucratic indifference. Mr. Martinez, you said it feels like you're fighting a war against red tape and people who don't care. Let me tell you something, you shouldn't have to fight that war alone. Judge Caprio steps down from the bench, standing beside him, no longer just a judge but an advocate. When this country sent you to Vietnam, it made a promise to care for you when you returned. That promise doesn't expire when you reach 67. It doesn't fade when your wife falls ill. And it certainly doesn't vanish because someone decides that following rules matters more than honoring those who served. Bob straightens up. Hearing words he's waited years, perhaps decades, to hear from someone in authority. Your Honor, I'm not asking for special treatment. I just want the system to be fair to people like me and Maria. Mr. Martinez, Judge Caprio replies firmly. Ensuring that a Purple Heart veteran can save his wife's life without being punished isn't special treatment. It's basic human decency. It's the least this country owes you. Returning to his bench, Judge Caprio's voice carries the resolve of someone determined to correct an injustice. Mr. Martinez, here's what's going to happen. This citation is dismissed. Not reduced, not suspended, dismissed entirely. Bob's eyes widen in disbelief and gratitude, but the judge isn't done. I'm also instructing court administration to contact the hospital's patient advocacy office to make sure emergency parking cases involving life-threatening medical situations are handled with proper discretion. Then, turning to the officer, Caprio adds, Officer Patterson, take this message back to your department. The next time a Purple Heart veteran parks illegally while trying to save his wife's life, the right response is to help him carry her into the hospital, not to hand him a ticket. The courtroom grows still as Judge Caprio's words resonate, a powerful display of moral leadership and respect for those who have sacrificed for their country. Robert Martinez stands before Judge Frank Caprio, but for the first time in months he stands taller. The heavy weight of injustice that once crushed him now begins to ease. Your Honor, Bob says, his voice firm and steady instead of weary. I don't know how to thank you for treating me with dignity. I was starting to think this country had forgotten people like me. Judge Caprio's expression reflects both sorrow that Bob ever felt that way and resolve to ensure he never does again. Mr. Martinez, this country hasn't forgotten you. Sometimes those in charge lose sight of that, but America remembers. I remember. Everyone in this courtroom remembers. Bob nods, realizing that something deeper has shifted. Not just his case, but his sense of belonging in the community he once served. Your Honor, when I got that ticket, when the insurance company denied our claims again, when the parking authority sent that generic letter, I felt invisible, like my service didn't mean anything anymore. Judge Caprio leans forward, his tone filled with respect meant only for those who've sacrificed. Mr. Martinez, your service matters. Your sacrifice matters. The fact that you're still standing up for your wife, your dignity, and what's right shows that the same values that made you a great soldier still guide you today. Bob's eyes well with tears, but this time they reflect recognition, not despair. I've been so angry, Your Honor. Angry at the system, at people who don't seem to care, and at myself for not being able to make things right for Maria. That anger is valid. Mr. Martinez, Judge Caprio replies calmly. When systems fail the very people they're meant to serve, anger is not only natural, it's justified. But now that frustration can become motivation for positive change instead of lingering anger. Judge Caprio rises and extends his hand to Bob, not as a judge addressing a defendant, but as one American recognizing another who has earned respect through service. Mr. Martinez, I want you to know this courtroom will always be open to you. If you ever face similar bureaucratic challenges, or if someone disrespects you because of your age or your disabilities, you come back here. Bob accepts the handshake, and for the first time since entering the courtroom, Judge Frank Caprio turns to address everyone present. But his words are meant not just for them, but for anyone who will hear Bob Martinez's story. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed today is the true purpose of our courts. Not to rigidly apply rules, but to ensure that justice works for the people, especially for those who have served our nation. The audience listens closely, realizing they've witnessed a powerful example of leadership and moral integrity. Mr. Martinez entered expecting to be treated like another case number. Instead, he leaves knowing his service still matters. His sacrifice is honored, and his community stands with him and Maria. Judge Caprio then looks directly at Officer Patterson and the court staff, making sure his message reaches everyone, responsible for carrying out the law with fairness and respect. Every veteran who steps into this courtroom carries the marks and memories of serving something far greater than themselves. Our responsibility isn't to add to those burdens, it's to ease them whenever we can. He gestures toward the now empty defendant's chair where Bob once stood. When Mr. Martinez risked his life in Vietnam, he wasn't concerned with parking rules or bureaucratic red tape. His focus was on protecting the freedoms that allow us to maintain institutions like hospitals and courts. This moment isn't just about a single parking violation or one veteran's battle with medical debt. It's about the kind of society we choose to be, one that honors service or one that penalizes people for putting family first. Judge Caprio speaks with the calm authority of someone who has spent decades defending justice. Mr. Martinez saved his wife's life and was punished for it. That isn't just unfair. It's a betrayal of the very principles that make this country worth defending. Yet Judge Caprio's closing words offer hope, not judgment. Today we change that story, he says. Today we reminded everyone that service matters, that sacrifice deserves respect, and that sometimes the most powerful thing a judge can do is simply treat people with the dignity they've earned. As the session ends, Bob Martinez doesn't walk out alone. Officer Patterson approaches him quietly, offering an apology and promising that similar cases will be handled with more compassion in the future. Members of the audience step forward, asking how they can support Maria's medical bills and insurance. Appeals. Judge Caprio's decision did far more than dismiss a parking ticket. It restored a veteran's faith in the system he once fought to protect. And now the question is ours. When we see veterans struggling under the weight of bureaucracy, what will we do? When we see systems failing the very people they were meant to protect, do we accept it as normal, or do we speak up and push for change? Bob discovered that there are still individuals in authority who understand that true service matters, and that sacrifice deserves to be recognized. His story reminds us that it often takes just one person choosing to do the right thing to restore faith in fairness and justice. If this story renewed your belief in honoring our veterans, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more Judge Caprio moments, and share in the comments about a veteran in your life who deserves appreciation. Remember Bob's lesson. Service matters, sacrifice must be honored, and dignity should never be compromised. The next time you encounter a veteran struggling with the system, think of Bob Martinez's journey. Sometimes the most meaningful act we can offer is acknowledging their service and showing them the respect they've earned.